Hello and welcome back to DMCA Chess Academy. This is Chess Coach Ritesh Mathew. And today's trap that I'm going to show you was created by a French chess player who lived from 1702 to 1792. And his name was François Antoine de Legal. He was probably world's best player from 1730 to 1755, and he came up with this opening trap called the Legal's Mate. And this chess opening trap is characterized by a queen sacrifice followed by a checkmate with minor pieces. So white lays a trap for black, and white sacrifices his queen, and if black accepts the sacrifice, then white can checkmate with his minor pieces. So those are the typical characteristics of the Legal's Mate. So let's look at this wonderful chess trap now. So the move order begins with white opens with e4 and black responds with e5. Now whenever both these pawns are played, they both are not protected. So white strikes the black pawn first and says, hey black, I'm striking your pawn. Would you like to defend it? Usually black defends it with knight to c6 or ignores the pawn and counterattacks white's pawn by playing knight f6, which is called the Petrov or the Russian defense. So these are some typical ways to defend the black pawn, but there is another way to defend the black pawn, and that is by playing d6. So this is called the Philidor's defense. Okay, so in the Philidor's defense we have this famous Legal's Mate trap. So white will continue with developing his light square bishop to c4, and here black will continue with the development of his light square bishop and pinning the knight to the queen. So this knight cannot move, it's relatively pinned. If the knight moves, white will lose the queen. So that's the whole idea up until now. Now it's white's turn, so white will continue with another developing move. And here the typical characteristics of the Philidor's defense is the black's dark square bishop is locked inside the pawn chain. Okay, because black wanted to defend the pawn by playing pawn to d6. So a small drawback to this is black's dark square bishop cannot come out right now. So typically, black may want to fianchetto his bishop on g7. So he plays this pawn to g6, and here's where the fireworks they start. So let's check the main line of the Legal's Mate. So after black plays the pawn to g6 with the idea of fianchettoing his bishop on g7, white may shock and surprise black by lifting this knight. Now the knight cannot be lifted because white will lose the queen, but that's the whole point of the trap. White will shock and surprise black by knight capturing the e5 pawn. Now here black may get excited, and obviously he's getting a queen, so who wouldn't be excited? So black gets super excited and thinks that white made a blunder, and he falls for the trap and picks up the queen. Now black is lost. It's checkmate in 2 moves. So if you want, you can pause the video and look for the checkmate in 2. Well, if you find this move, white bishop captures f7, then congratulations. Now the knight on e5 is protecting the white bishop, so black cannot capture, and black cannot escape to d7. He cannot capture, so the only place he can go right now is to e7. And once the king moves to e7, bingo, it's knight d5 checkmate. All right. So now king cannot capture the bishop, king cannot escape to e8, d7, neither can he go to e6, nor can he go to f6, and it's all over for black. So this is the main line of the Legal's Mate chess trap. Now instead of falling for the trap, after g6, black plays g6, and when the knight captures the e5 pawn, black, instead of falling for the trap, black can continue with pawn takes the knight, right? And then it seems like white lost a minor piece, but white can get the minor piece back by capturing the black bishop. So here white is still winning because white has so many pieces active, and he has nice center control here. He's ready for castling. So development wise, white is doing much better and white is winning, and all of the black's pieces are still on the 8th rank. There is no development, king hasn't been castled. So there is absolutely this drawback that black has, and white will still win the game if he plays accurately. However, instead of falling for the trap, and losing instantly, black can still continue by capturing the knight. So that's one proper way black could have continued. Now let's check after white playing knight to c3. Instead of black going for the g6 pawn, he should have continued with either knight to f6 or knight to c6. Now how does knight f6 make a difference instead of pawn to g6? If pawn g6, then it will allow knight captures e5 tactic and followed up with a checkmate. So instead of pawn to g6, if black correctly continued with knight to f6, now white cannot pull off this trick, knight captures, right? Because now black will be happy to capture the queen, and now if white tries to duplicate the same trap and attempt to checkmate, then black can go to e7, and now here knight to d5 checkmate doesn't work. Why? Because the presence of knight on f6, now the knight is controlling the d5, so black will capture our knight, and it won't lead to a checkmate. So knight f6 is the proper way to play instead of pawn to g6. Let's check another line. Instead of pawn to g6, black could have continued with knight to c6. Again, this will not allow the trick knight captures e5 and sacrificing the queen. It wouldn't have allowed this trick. How so? Well, here again, black shouldn't fall for the same trick and capture the queen, because this will allow the same tactic. Captures and gives a check. Black king comes down and then followed up with a checkmate. So instead of now, after white captures the pawn here, instead of capturing the queen, black can simply capture the knight. So presence of knight on c6 allows black to capture the knight. So white lost a knight for the price of a pawn, and now white is eventually going to lose the game. So these are a couple of continuations that black could have went forward with instead of moving the pawn to g6. So it's a very nice trap. I hope you like this trap, and do try it on your opponent. If your opponent chooses to play the Philidor's defense in the opening and tries to save his pawn using the Philidor's defense, then keep this trap in mind. Don't always rush to use the trap. Always do your basic calculations, and always know the typical features and characteristics of any opening. So the typical characteristics of Philidor's defense are: the bishop will be locked inside the dark square bishop, so you can continue with your normal development. And if black bishop pins the knight, then be on the lookout for this Legal's Mate chess trap. I hope you like the trap. Do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel Chess Melody for more chess and music related videos. Thanks and have a great day.